Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. If you could hide to Kolob podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Yeah, Daniel, Book of Ether. I think we said it last week. Can't believe how close we are to the end. The Book of Ether, Book of Moroni, and that's it. On to the Doctrine and Covenants.
They're on. Well, I'm using the quad, and there's no more tabs left for the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, you're
It's the
right. The
next
next
tab
tab is
is
Doctrine.
DNC one.
Yep, same. Crazy.
So yeah, we are right at the end, and what a great year it's been. Clive, I've got a quote that I can kick us off with. It. That's fine if you don't have one. I've got one.
Ready to go. Yep.
So we were talking about this actually in Elders Quorum on Sunday, just gone. And this is from President Nelson's talk at October 2024. And he announced 17 temples in places where 10, 20 years ago would just be unthinkable to be in there. Well, certainly to a lay person, I'm sure the leaders of the church have always known that there will be temples, this many temples in these parts of the world forever, and probably knew when they were going to come as well. But he announces them and he says, "My dear brothers and sisters, do you see what is happening right before our eyes? I pray that we will not miss the majesty of this moment. The Lord is indeed hastening his work." And then he says here, "Why are we building temples at such an unprecedented pace? Why?" And I can imagine him knowing that so many members are just going, "Wow, I wonder why we're building them so quickly. Is the end near? Are we up to the part in our life where this is what the prophets have foretold, where temples will dot the earth?" But I love what he says here, because the Lord has instructed us to do so. Why are we building temples so quickly? Because the Lord has told us that's what we should do. Very simple.
That's very good. I mean, because at the end of the day, that's the answer for everything, isn't it? Why do you do this? Why is
Right.
this? Why is that? Well, the Lord has told us. So, what else matters?
And our religion is based around a trust that the things that the Lord says is what we should do. And so he's saying, build some temples. Well, just crack on with it.
Yeah,
Build some temples.
that's right.
Yeah, don't wait. And I don't know if it does President Nelson, he announces temples before the church has even acquired all the land. Or I think other presidents of the church have waited till the church has acquired the land, possibly even building rights before they announce them. Where President Nelson's like, nope, I'm saying it's going in this area. We're just going to figure it out, and it's going to go in that area.
Yeah, which I mean, he's right because once he announced it, the Lord will make sure it's the case. But I guess it gets everyone really excited and then go, it's so long to wait now because we're still going to do all these permits and everything. So,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, we are in Ether, and Clive, I thought might just take everyone back to the Book of Mosiah. So, in the chronological order of the Book of Mormon, we're going back in time here. The Book of Ether is not back in time to Mosiah the first or Mosiah the second. It's not even back in time to Lehi. The Book of Ether here is going way further back, maybe 2000 BC is the time frame of the Book of Ether.
do you want an exact date?
Sure, go.
2233 is where we start off.
2233 BC.
That's right.
So the Book of Mormon spans from 2233 BC right up to, what is it? I think it's around 400 and something AD. And so, but the chronological order is not that. The chronological order is, well, Lehi, who dwelt in a tent, he's 650 something like that BC. And so we're immediately immersed into Lehi's world. We're immersed into Jerusalem. And then we are taken from Jerusalem to the US, to the American continent. And then eventually we get to Christ's birth, and Christ visits the Nephites. And then we work all the way up to 400 AD. And now Moroni, he finds these treasures, this Book of Ether, which was translated by the power of the Lord, of course, but by Mosiah. And then he puts them in right at the end here. So it can get a little bit complicated to go, well, hang on, where am I up to? Especially the Book of Mormon, you get to Jarom, Omni, you get to Enos, and you're kind of like, where are we up to here? We skipped many, many years ahead, and then kind of we work our way through, and now we're going back in time again.
Yeah, because it's funny, isn't it? Because we spoke about this a long time ago, because this was found by the people of Limhi. And so
Yeah.
we spoke about this a long time ago. And so, yeah, in chronological order, like you said, it's sort of, it jumps back way to 2000 years before, but also, hundreds of years before when we first learned about these records. So, yeah, there's a lot of jumping around.
Yeah. And and I've talked about, or we've talked about multiple times, of how many people are on the American continent when Lehi gets there. It's not accurate to assume that Nephi and co land where they land. They land at the land of promise. And it's not accurate to assume that in the entire Americas it's just them. In our own record, in our own canon, we've got record that there were people there a long time before Nephi and Lehi got there. And the American continent had tons of people in it when Lehi and his family arrived.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you got the people of Ether. There's the Mulekites as well. So,
Yeah.
and then there's those that we don't have records about. So, yeah, there's got to be a lot.
So if anyone wants to go back, it's Mosiah chapter 28 is where there's a decision. Well, these can be interpreted by someone. There's a seer, there's a living seer, and the living seer can interpret the land. And I think in Mosiah 28, it even says that that was the purpose. I've got it here actually, chapter 28, verse 13 and 14. And now he translated them by the means of those two stones, which were fastened into the two rims of a bow. Now these things were prepared from the beginning and were handed down from generation to generation for the purpose of interpreting languages. There's an anxiety about these plates, and so they're translated. And now Moroni decides to add them into this particular part of the.
What is interesting straight off the bat, I think, with Ether, right? So Moroni says, okay, I'm going to talk about this ancient record that I've been given, right? The very first thing he talks about is verse 3 and verse 4. And as I suppose that the first part of this record, which speaks concerning the creation of the world, and also of Adam, and an account from that time even to the great tower, and whatsoever things transpired among the children of men until that time, is had among the Jews. Therefore, I do not write these things which transpired from the days of Adam until that time, but they are had upon the plates, and whoso findeth them, the same will have power that he may get the full account. Now, what's interesting about that is we don't have that account.
So is that the sealed part of the sealed
It
portion?
has to be. Moroni has said, okay, there's from the creation up to the tower. I'm not going to write in this part, but it's there. But obviously, because we don't have that, it's in the sealed portion.
Yeah. But we don't have it, but clearly Moroni's looked through it.
Yeah, exactly. He's looked through it. He's read it. He's the one that sealed a portion of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, because I guess he was told to. So we're getting from the tower down to, the very last man. I guess that's where he wants to really focus on.
Yeah. So we get a bit of Bible script here, don't we, really, Clive, with well, what do you think? I mean, in terms of this person was begat this person, was the son of this person, was the son of this person. We don't really we get that once, I think, in the whole rest of the Book of Mormon, but it's not really normal for the book to have this in there. So clearly this was done by, you can see that this writing wasn't abridged by anyone who abridged any other part of the book,
Yeah.
because the writing is a different style. When I was reading it, I was thinking that I know that so Mormon, in the way his style is, he doesn't need to go, well, this person is the son of this person is the son of this person. And we certainly don't open the Book of Mormon and get Lehi, who was the son of this person, who was the son of this person, who was the son of this person. But clearly, I think you're right in terms of it matching more biblical writings. So when the Jaredites are writing their record, that's what they're coming from. They're coming from this ancient Jewish landscape. And so that must have been more of an important part of their writings, which is why they've added it in.
But it's interesting as well because eventually we'll learn who begat who to eventually get to Ether. So it's interesting that even at the beginning, he's gone, okay, this is where Ether came from. At the end, we'll learn about Ether, but I'm going to tell you at the beginning, this is where Ether came from, even though later on we'll hear that, well, this person begat this person who then became king, and they begat this person who then became king, and so on and so on. So yeah,
Right.
it is. You're right. It is completely different writing. Again, just another proof of the Book of Mormon because it's so different to the way that it's been written so far. Well, let's talk about the story of Jared and the brother of Jared, which we can get into why we call him the brother of Jared in a minute. But so the very first thing is we're talking about the tower. So, verse 33, Jared came forth with his brother and their families, with some others and their families from the great tower at the time the Lord confounded the languages of the people. So, this is great because this gives us an exact time frame of where they came from. Well, they came from the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel? What do you say? Tower of Babel? Tower of Babel?
Well, I think it's Babel because it's from Babylonian. I think it's become Babel or the Tower of Babel because it's easier for us to write in or for us to say in English. Babel sounds a bit babbly,
I agree.
but from my understanding is the tower is from Babylon, therefore the tower is Babel.
Yeah, I'm with you. I used to say Babel all the time because you're right, it made more sense in the English language. But yeah, the people babble because the languages are confound. And yeah, Babylon,
Yeah.
Babylonian, you know?
Should we just declare that that's true right now?
Well, I think if we just keep it consistent with me and you so that's not
Yeah.
confusing, let's say Babel.
Yeah. Yep. Sure.
All right. So let's talk about the Tower of Babel, right? So there's a lot of stories out there of why the Tower of Babel was constructed, right? So
Yeah.
what the basic understanding is that the Tower of Babel was built to reach heaven, right? I think that's it.
Yeah, that's the idea of it to reach heaven. I think the backstory is there's a flood in the land and only a select few get to go. So through the generations afterwards, people are figuring out how can they get closer to God and how can they be one with God. And unlike, they're in the generations prior that are swept away literally, now they're figuring out, well, how can we get closer to God? Because their minds are on to get closer to God, this is a physical act. God is a physical person. So therefore, to get closer to him, I've got to do something physical.
Right.
So there's just no understanding of the spiritual side.
Well, let's talk about how Josephus explains it then. So Josephus, we've talked about before, he's a scholar
Yeah.
back around the time when Jesus was alive. And
Yeah.
so, the Bible was a bit more intact then. So he speaks of Nimrod. Now, Nimrod is Noah's grandson, and he becomes this wicked person. And he doesn't want to, if the God were to flood the world again, because he doesn't understand the doctrine, if God were to flood the world again, he doesn't want to die. And so I'll just read what he says here. So this is Nimrod. He would be revenged on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for that he would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and that he would avenge himself on God for destroying their forefathers. So, right here, Nimrod, first of all, doesn't understand the doctrine. He thinks that he can build a tower so high that if there was to be a flood again, he wouldn't drown. Him and the people wouldn't drown. They would avenge themselves of God, and they would be able to, yeah, basically reach God. It's mocking God is what he's doing. And so that's why the Lord confounded their languages, because they are mocking God, saying, well, if we build this tower, you can't drown us. And so therefore we win.
And that they'll be on his level. They don't need to do those things. They can just become like God and be at his level just by building a tower as high as they can.
Well, not that they can be like with God. It's more like, haha, God, you can't get to us. We're too high.
But didn't they think that they would essentially reach heaven? Didn't they think that they could be able to tell so high it could reach heaven?
Well, they says that they can reach the heavens so that the flood can't get to us.
Right, okay.
So yeah, yeah, no, it's basically just mocking God, saying, if we build this tower, you can't kill us, and we'll be safe next time. So again, didn't understand the doctrine because that's just not the way it was. So couple of things that I'm interested in here. So the Lord saw this wickedness that they were doing and decided, well, you know, I'm not going to flood the world again because I've already made that promise. So now I'm going to confound the languages so they can't speak to each other. Now, what's interesting here is in verse 34, and the brother of Jared, being a large and mighty man, and a man highly favored of the Lord, Jared his brother said unto him, cry unto the Lord that he will not confound us, that we may understand our words. Right? So he is saying, go to the Lord and ask him that he won't confound our languages so we can understand each other. That makes me think that, first of all, it wasn't an immediate confounding of the languages. It wasn't, snap your fingers, now no one can speak different languages, because it must have been a gradual process for Jared to say to his brother, you need to go to the Lord before this happens to us. I always thought it was an immediate thing, but obviously it must have been a gradual thing.
I mean, that makes sense because whether that's the written word or the spoken word, if their languages were different, the only other thing it could have been is if it was immediate, but the Lord allowed certain people to have the same language. So maybe there wasn't 100,000 languages, maybe there were 10,000 languages, and some people could still communicate. And so they've prayed and said, so the brother of Jared said, sorry, Jared has asked his brother, the brother of Jared, to pray to the Lord, say, can you leave this as it is so we can keep communicating?
Right. Okay. Yeah, maybe. So again, so then, the brother of Jared did cry unto the Lord, and the Lord had compassion upon Jared. This is 35. Therefore, he did not confound the language of Jared, and Jared and his brother were not confounded. So, another point is, well, who is the brother of Jared that Jared were to go to him and say, you pray to the Lord and you ask these things?
Well, this is what I was thinking here. What is the relationship that the brother of Jared and Jared have? Like what is that relationship? Is one the spiritual leader in the brother of Jared, and is one the political leader or more the industrious leader? So out of the two brothers, they've got strengths in different areas that help propel their family or their tribe that they were a part of. Obviously, they both had their strengths to the point where Jared is saying, "Okay, first of all, I'm organizing us here. You need to go and pray to the Lord to make sure we can keep chatting because it's vital we can talk to each other. So go do X." Knowing that his brother is mighty with the Lord. So knowing his brother's strengths is with the Lord, but maybe Jared's strengths is with more of that organizing. So they're kind of recognizing the strengths of each other that they can make sure that they can keep working forward, I guess. That's what I was thinking. Like what the roles of the brothers are very different.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, it is quite possibly that. Originally, I thought, this is 115 years after the flood. So people are starting to go off to different towns, and, you know, the righteous people are having the correct religion, you'd say, in the different parts of the area. So there have to be someone like, for example, like a stake president version, I suppose, over all the congregations. And I thought maybe the brother of Jared was that, but then yeah, I had the same thought you did. Maybe not, because Jared keeps going to his brother and saying, ask the Lord for this and ask the Lord for
Yeah.
this, instead of the brother of Jared going, okay, I'm in charge. I'm going to go ask the Lord all the things that I need. So yeah, you're right. Maybe he's just mighty. And, like if we were to go to a crowd of people and I needed something, I'd say to you, can you go talk to that person? Because you're better at speaking to people than I am. So you're right. Maybe it is just his strength that he can go to the
They've
Lord.
they I guess, yeah, Jared recognizes the roles that they need to fulfill and who's the best person at fulfilling each specific thing that they need to do.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention before we move on from this is in the footnotes, it speaks of the language, when he's saying we want to continue to speak this language, it gives reference to the pure language. So it gives references to Moses 6:6, which speaks of the pure language. So I thought that was interesting because obviously when, as you said at the beginning, Moroni got these plates, they needed to be interpreted. So there was obviously a different language. And yeah, it refers to the pure language. So very much from Noah pass down the pure language that was spoken of, which I guess isn't really around anymore. So I thought that was just an interesting note.
I educated my kids that God doesn't speak English. God's native tongue might not be
Were they
English,
shocked?
and they were shocked.
Yeah,
They, what do you mean? Well, how will we understand?
that's great. Okay, so do you want to talk about the why we say the brother of Jared and not his real name?
Well, the scriptures don't tell us his name, do they? Unless there's a very spiritual reason for it that I'm not across. But I know that a family approached Joseph Smith and said, can you basically bless this child, and can you give him a name? And Joseph Smith gave him the name of Mahonri Morionkama. And later on, I don't think he tells the family at the time, but later on, he says to people that that was the name of this mighty brother of Jared.
Isn't that interesting that, it came sort of that way? But yeah, I mean, maybe it
Yeah,
was, I don't know, maybe it's too big a name to constantly write, or I don't know. I'm not sure why it's not written. But yeah, Joseph Smith did have that revelation later. And I mean, I
yeah,
guess there is clues because in chapter 2, verse 13, they go to a place and they call it Moriankama. That gives reference to Alma chapter 8 when it says that the place where the first people dwell are named after the person that finds it. So,
right.
I guess there's clues all about.
Yeah. So Jared's name is Jared Morionkama, and the brother of Jared's name is Mahonri. So their last name being the Morionkama
Did they have last
family.
names back then? I don't think last
I
names
would
were
think
out
so.
until the 1800s.
Oh, I don't know if that's right. I mean, you think about Windsors and
Maybe.
the family of people, but they were certainly well. They was that were well. If it wasn't their name, it was certainly the name of their tribe. If you think about tribal names,
Right.
but I would say that then they're the family of the Moriankama. I mean, in different countries like Iceland, they have the son at the end of their name. It means the son of dad. So their last name is John's son of John. That's how some country, or certainly some Nordic countries were. But that was my assumption. Mahonri Morionkama, they were part of the Morionkama clan, tribe, or something.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Maybe someone can write in and give us a better explanation of what that is.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. 1800s probably a bit late, but I'm sure it was, AD when last names came in. But yeah, you're right.
Right.
Someone who's way smarter than us will tell us about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jared and Mahonrai Moriankama and their families, they all are, the language is all the same for them. So they take their tents, and it's interesting. So they go off and they explore places that have never been explored before. Because, like I said, it's only 115 years since the flood. So they're in uncharted territory. You
Right.
remember when Nephi and Lehi landed in the Americas, everything was new to them. So it's the same sort of thing with their family. So they go to places that people have never been before. And just jump into chapter 2, unless you got anything for chapter 1 still.
Well, yeah, a couple of things still for chapter 1. So they get communication now with the Lord. So in 38, and it came to pass that Jared spake again unto his brother, saying, Go and inquire of the Lord whether he will drive us out of the land. And if he will drive us out of the land, cry unto him whether we shall go. And who knoweth but the Lord will carry us forth into the land, which is choice above all the earth. And if it so be, let us be faithful unto the Lord, that we may receive it for our inheritance. So again, this dynamic between Jared and his brother. Jared knows what's best. He knows what the Lord's capable of. Where's the Lord going to take us? Well, wherever it is, we need to be faithful so that we might get that as our inheritance, because we're part of the Lord's family. You only get the inheritance. The inheritance comes from your direct family. Whether in this cases it would be land inheritance, but in this case, but what Jared is talking about is no, we're all part of the Lord's family. Therefore, we're entitled to inheritance from the Lord. And so he instructs him. So he clearly, Jared is a fantastic leader, but he recognizes that his brother is a better religious leader, I guess, or better. He's much more abiding to gospel principles. So then, of course, that's what happens. And in verse 40, it came to pass that the Lord did hear the brother of Jared and had compassion upon him and said, Go to and gather together thy flocks, both male and female, and of every kind, and also the seed of the earth of every kind, and their families, and also Jared thy brother and his family, and also the friends of their families, and the friends of Jared and their families. There's a lot of people. And then he says in verse 42, And when thou hast done this, thou shalt go at the head of them down into the valley which is northward, and there will I meet thee, and I will go before thee into the land which is choice above all the lands of the earth. So the end of chapter 1 is setting the scene for what is now going to happen to these Jared, to what we will call the Jaredites. They go to the Lord and they're immediately being guided by the Lord to where they should go. And later on, that we know that they go to the Americas, but the Lord here is guiding them to go to this water, and when you get to the head, you need to stop and wait there. Don't go any further because you need more instruction. But before you get there, go and gather these people, go and talk to these people, go and educate them that this is what I've told you to do, and therefore they need to get themselves in order, and then they can be a part of this journey as well. So it really sets us up here. And he says that he's going to take them to somewhere that's going to be a great nation. And this is similar language to what's being used to the Lehites, that where they're going to go, the Lord's going to make a great nation. And so they're both setting off for the same area. And there shall be none greater than than the nation which I will raise up unto me of thy seed upon all the face of the earth. And thus will I do unto thee, because this long time ye have cried unto me. So they're a faithful family, and the Lord's been looking over them, going, these are the ones that are going to be faithful enough to go to this new land.
And I mean, the faithful, I mean, they were there for 2,000 years. So obviously, it all for a
Oh, they did
while.
a great job.
Yeah, they did a great job. So
Yeah.
it talks about how they, like you said, they were told to take animals and seeds of every kind. So
Yeah.
in chapter 2, it talks about how they ensnared some birds and they carried some vessels with them. It talks about the honeybee, which they say was Deseret, which I guess it does talk about that for a whole verse, which I thought that was a bit odd. Deseret
Well,
talking to
the
the honeybee.
Deseret, the word Deseret has origins in the Egyptian language. Someone again much cleverer than us will be able to educate us on that. But this just shows that Deseret links them to that Egyptian past that Joseph Smith just simply would have had no idea.
Yeah, for sure. And then, yeah, verse 4. Verse 4 is interesting. So the Lord talked to the brother of Jared in a cloud and told them, you know, basically, he spoke to the brother of Jared in a cloud. Now, it's interesting because the Lord will do the same thing years later to Moses. And it's just funny that, and these things will happen again. The Lord will do things and he'll do again a few years later to Moses and to Abraham. But I think it's interesting because when we get to Nephi's time, the Lord comes in a different way. And so it just shows again the time difference, I suppose. Again, this is like things that happened in biblical times compared to 600 years before Christ. The times have changed and the Lord comes and visits in different ways. So the Lord speaks to Jared, the brother of Jared, in the cloud. And then in verse 5, he commands him to go into the wilderness. And he says there
Yeah.
that into that quarter where there never had men been. So again, like I spoke of before, this is uncharted territory for them. They're going to a brand new place that no one has ever stepped foot on before, which is really
Mm.
interesting. And again, the Lord travels with them in a cloud. And at this stage now,
And what does that mean, by the way? What do you think that means, the Lord travels with them in a cloud? That's their human interpretation of what they think happened. Is the Lord in a, I don't know what clouds are called. I'm not that clever, but in a, is the Lord actually traveling with them in a cloud? Or do they just know that the Lord is always with them and clouds are always around? So that's the best possible explanation that they can give.
well, I guess so, because I guess they've gone, well, in the air, there's this fluffy, you know, blurry thing, and the Lord is speaking to us, and we can't see him, and they can't see him for specific reasons, but And I guess that's the best way to describe it because, Moses describes it as a pillar of cloud. So
Right.
again, I only know clouds and you sort of look like a pillar, so you're a pillar of cloud, you know?
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, yeah, yep, sure.
But I mean, I don't know. Again, smarter people than us. But yeah, I guess that's the best way I would explain it. Now, it's interesting,
Yeah.
isn't it? So before, we'll talk about the famous ships that we're going to speak of. They
Yeah.
build barges to get over bodies of water in verse 6 here. So it's interesting that they already know about building of barges, which I guess will help them in the future. And I wonder if, right, this is maybe just my curiosity, and I might be wrong, but
Mhm.
it says, and it came to pass they did travel in the wilderness and did build barges in which they did cross many waters. And I wonder if the Lord had made it so they had to cross many waters so they could learn, okay, this is how we build a barge. Okay, then they go to the next place and they go, okay, well, this is how we can improve it. Because they're about to set sail for over 300 days to go to the promised land. And so
Right.
they need to be able to build these barges perfectly.
Yeah.
And so I know that.
And they need to know what it's like to be on the water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the other thing as well. And I know that the Lord is going to bless them and the Lord will teach them the right way to do it. But I wonder if this is sort of his way to prepare them for it.
Yeah, interesting.
It's funny, isn't it? So, just like Mormon used to jump in all the time, or at least that's what we felt like he was doing. He sort of jumped in. Moroni does the same thing. So the Lord it gives them a promise in verse 8, and then from that time forth and forever should serve him, and him the true and only God, and should be swept off with the fullness of the wrath shall come upon them. So, you know, follow the Lord, follow me, and I'll give you all the promises. But if you don't, and then verse 9 to verse 12 is Moroni jumping in and basically saying, if you stop worshiping the Lord will destroy your people. And it's interesting because this is exactly what's happened to Moroni. And so he can step in and go, what the Lord is testifying here to the brother of Jared, I know for a fact that that is going to happen because that happened to me.
Yeah. And we get this right so if we go to 13, he says, "And now I proceed with my record." So he says, "I'm going back to this Jaredite record. For behold, it came to pass that the Lord did bring Jared and his brethren forth, even to that great sea which divideth the lands. And they came and they pitched their tents and they called the name of the place Moriankama, and they dwelt in tents and dwelt in the tents on the seashore for the space of four years." Now, Clive, this is one thing I wanted to bring to your attention. And it came to pass at the end of 4 years that the Lord came again unto the brother of Jared and stood in a cloud and talked with him. And for the space of 3 hours did the Lord talk with the brother of Jared and chastened him because he remembered not to call upon the name of the Lord. And it's not even a small chastisement. The brother of Jared repented of the evil which he had done, and he did call upon the name of the Lord for his brethren who were with him. And the Lord said, "I will forgive thee, but thy brethren for their sins, but thou sin no more. For you remember that my spirit will always strive with you. If ye will sin until ye are fully ripe, ye will be cut off. These are my thoughts upon the land which I shall give you." Like 3 hours, the Lord is slamming the brother of Jared here. And it seems that the Lord's frustration is in comfort. Well, this is what my interpretation is. The brother of Jared and the families that he's taken have found comfort. They've gone to this place at the head of a river. It must have been nice food. They're there for 4 years, so food is plenty. The land must have been really nice, and they've kind of rested. The Lord's got them to this point, but they're only at point A. They're at point one. He needs them to get to point two or at point B ASAP, but he's not going to take slothful servants. And the brother of Jared and Jared, in fact, have stopped praying, and perhaps through their example of stop praying, so has all of the families. And so the Lord pulls him aside, and this is not good enough. The people, I'm taking you to a place that has been prepared. for the righteous, and you aren't being righteous right now. And that's why you've been sitting there for 4 years with doing nothing because you're not ready to go. And now I'm telling you to sort this out or else.
It is, yeah, you're right. It is interesting because, if this were to happen to the Nephites, well, they stopped praying to the Lord, and so the Lord caused a famine, or the Lord caused earthquakes and storms, so that the people would become humble again and pray to the Lord. But you're right, the brother of Jared, there's none of that. It's more like they've become comfortable, like you said, just resting. And the Lord's going, well, look, you're an important people, and you're going to have important people, and they're going to have important people. I need you to be absolutely prepared and humbled and
Yeah.
come to me. Yeah, you're right. 3 hours, that is just crazy. But, even
Yeah.
you think about what happens later, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the things that the brother of Jared sees, it mustn't have, like, I don't know, it's hard. You think, well, it mustn't have been anything too bad that he had done for the 4 years, but obviously, the Lord's just gone, well, you need to be better. You just need to be better because, yeah, you're right. I've prepared this place. It is a perfect place. It is the place where you and your people are going to be for the next 2,000 years. You need to be prepared and you need to be better about it.
All right. Well, why don't we put it there, Clive, and we'll come back for a part two, and we will talk about the tight like onto a dish when we come back for part two of Ether chapter 1 to chapter 5. Catch us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We're enjoying studying the Book of Mormon and the Come Follow Me program this year.